Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the Koenigsegg Jesko has come to Forza Horizon 4, and while it may not be my favourite of the hypercars, it doesn't replace the likes of the Apollo or the wobbly-winged Zenvo, it is still a pretty cool vehicle. It's a pretty interesting vehicle. It's a fun addition to have to the game. Now, this is the normal Jesko. It's not the absolute version, the one with the crazy, ridiculous top speed. It just has a ridiculous top speed, this one. It's still a very, very fast car, so naturally we're going to test it out by finding out if we can build cars to go faster than it for less money, or how cheaply we can build cars to go faster than it. Because, I mean, beating this car full stop is going to be difficult. There was a caveat to this as well. The vehicles had to be rear-wheel drive, so we have got a lineup of cars that are ready to take on the Jesko. We have, starting from the cheapest, we have a Camaro. This is 102,000 credits, the Camaro. Bear in mind, this is 2.5 million or something along those lines. £100,000 Camaro. Whether it can beat it or not, though, we don't know. We have £104,000 Mustang. We have £124,000 BMW Z4. He's a little bit wacky, mad, hot rod Ford thing over here. Yeah, but that's 135,000. 400 credits more, and we have another 135,000 Corvette. We have a Lotus. Over here now, their engine swaps and all of that have gone on into these vehicles. The Lotus has as much power, 1,200 horsepower, as much power as I have in the Jesko. This was a grand sum of 152,000. We have a Caterham at 155. Interestingly, after test runs, the Caterham decided to vanish out of existence. Decided to take off the turbos because figured less power might actually make it less of a death trap. So we'll see how that one goes. 160,000. We have got a TVR up towards the slightly more expensive end of the spectrum. 199,000. We have got a BAC Mono, the highest PI vehicle here. It's an X-Class, actually higher PI than the Jesko. That one. We have a brave choice than the Lotus 311. Also, it was 199,350 credits, 300 credits more than the Mono. Looks a bit chilly in there. I'll be honest. It looks a bit chilly in the Mono as well. Yeah, Lotus 311 is notoriously dangerous. We'll see how that goes. And the most expensive car of the lot is a Monte Carlo at 246,000 credits. I don't know how it's... I mean, it starts off much lower PI than everything else, so it has to have a lot of upgrades to actually get it there. The thinking behind this is it has the special retro... vintage race tyres that are slicks, but I mean the base car is not exactly a mono, is it? So we'll see how that one works. It is the most expensive, but there we go. That is our lineup of cars that are going to try and take on the Jesko. I'm not sure if any of them are going to beat it, but we're going to give it a go. We're going to try and find out. So for our first race, our first test, we've come to the Asmore Heritage Circuit. This is a pretty fast track. You do need a good amount of grip, though. They've got very, very nasty corners around here. Very easy to have issues with your cars. I'm starting in the middle of the pack. The BAC Mono just behind. We'll see what we can do, really, with this. I mean, PI-wise, yeah, we're one of the higher, second highest PI, in fact, and the Jesko should at least be able to use its power. I mean, a lot of cars here were not designed for the crazy level of powers that are suddenly being shoehorned into them. Here we go. Let's try not spin the wheels up too much. Honestly, the gearing in this car is terrible. You might as well set up in third for a lot of stuff, because first and second are basically useless. We will get past the Corvette. Now, top speed-wise, we should muller a lot of these things. We are going to have to then try and slow it down. Oh, there's a lot of understeer through the corners. Now, of course, the Caterham is going to be much lighter than I am. Oh, and there might be cars with bigger tyres than I have on this. Jesus, the Camaro's got a good run through there and carried a lot of speed. Oh, there's nowhere to go. I've been bullied by a Caterham. The cheap... Oh, there's a Ford has turned up. The cheap American cars, muscle cars, we're past now. As a cheap American car, they're relatively cheap. Oh, that's got in too deep through that. That's a little bit silly from me. Oh, and then we got a BMW slide across in front of us. And now stuck on the outside of everything. That's okay. Whoa, Caterham going to move across to defend. My brakes are quite good. Okay. We need to not be in the thick of the action here if we can help it. Oh, for a couple of corners maybe. We have slipped back to 7. I mean, this is me just trying to stay out of trouble on the most part. Lombo's having scary issues with that Ford. Okay, can I now be left alone for a few corners here? We're to the inside of the Ford. Now, it's a drag race. Between the Ford should be interesting to see who's got... No, that thing is quicker than I am. The double down? I don't even remember what it's called. It's madness, whatever it is. Oh, it is insanely quick down the straights. What is it called? I don't know how I've forgotten the name of it. I have one. It's ridiculous. Fantastically entertaining to drive, but woefully uncontrollable most of the time. The Caterham just doesn't have the power. It's like, oh, that's from a long way back. That was not intentional at all. I forgot how bad the Ford is in terms of handling. So the Caterham has got more corner speed, and it's just so much lighter, but it can't match the top end of the Jesko and the Ford. I think overall, if we get this right, we just take that line there, so much tighter, a bit wide on the next part. And the Ford is going to fight back. Well, what was a Ford once upon a time, there's not much original Ford in that. So quick down the straight. It's funny to watch it shoot off into the distance. And then have a horrible time when it gets to a corner. Might actually be a little difficult to beat this, just because it's so fast getting out of this final turn. That run to the line. We're going to have to find a way. Oh, ping off of a wall there. It wanted to move across and defend. There's a gap to the inside. Oh, and then it kicks sideways massively. That is the other fear with that car. It is dangerous, but there's no other way to put it with that. Oh, God. As an all-wheel drive, it's very difficult to keep it pointing in the right direction. As rear-wheel drive, it's, yeah, a hellish car. Now, are we far enough away that it can't beat me? It probably will still overtake me, but if we make it go the long way around, it's not going to want to do that. There it is. It's to the outside. It's just going to take things nice and easy in this Jesko. It really is between me and Lombo here. No one else has got an answer. The Mono is into third and is climbing a bit, maybe because we're busy fighting one another. I've not showered myself with glory in terms of my driving around this race so far. Oh, if we have a good lap, I think we can probably pull far enough away from that Ford that it's not going to bother us. But yeah, it's good enough through the corners that it doesn't lose so much time to the Jesko. Admittedly, these are not my best sort of cars to drive. I'm much more used to lower class vehicles. Oh, that's very wide through there. That's a little too brave for me. The Mono is actually catching. The Mono could be a real threat for the end of this race if we're not careful. We need a good final lap, actually. Now, that Mono is certainly quick. There's another car, very quick. Often can be incredibly difficult to drive. I mean, it's going to be much lighter than my Jesko. This thing is, what, £3,000, which, okay, is light for a car, but not in this field. So, yeah, there is that. Oh, let's get stopped up here. I mean, it's decent to drive this vehicle. It is just a bit of a... it's just so much speed going on around here. It's really easy to make silly mistakes. Oh, get the front end turned in. I am worried about that Mono. It is right behind us now. We're going to try and... oh, let's say we're going to try and defend. There's just... the Mono was too quick. It was able to get to the inside, and it will outrun me down here. It won't have the top speed, but it does have, apparently, to about 200 miles an hour, enough speed that I can't do anything about it. I've got no answer to the Mono's grip. That is just much, much better in the corners. Oh, the Ford's had a look because I've had a bad run this time around. Oh, Ford got wheel spin and murdered me. The Ford has lifted on that one. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't intentional. The Ford just got on the power and slid into the door and pushed me well wide of that one. Jesus, the Mono was quick. There's no way I can hold on to that. 2.5 seconds, you can't defend against that. Me and the Ford, the custom Ford, had a good battle in all of that. The Caterham would get 4th ahead of the TVR, pretty close between those. Then we have the Corvette, followed by the Esprit. The Mustang is down in 8th ahead of the Z4. Very, very close battle in that mid-pack. Damn, that Mono was a hell of a quick car. So, for the second part of this, rather than just doing another straight-up race, it's a little bit different. We'd head to the festival. It's got a little festival hill climb stage. We've run it before as a tournament. This time, though, we're going to be running it as a time trial. All the vehicles would run up here, see what one could go the fastest, and if anything, could beat the Jesko. Because, I mean, this is a nasty course. here. There's this initial sort of switchback road. This is a lot of low-speed stuff for what are very, very powerful cars here. I mean, 550 horsepower is the lowest horsepower car, and that's in a Caterham that weighs nothing. So, you know, we've got 7,000-8,000 horsepower in these vehicles that are trying to put that power down to the road on a very twisty section. It then opens up a little bit more later on in the stage with the Camaro working its way through. Let's go in sort of reverse cost order for this one. It opens up a little bit more. You got some faster sections for the cars to try and use their horsepower for acceleration and all that. It's a tough stage. It is a tough stage. Most of it is done thankfully in ghost mode, so if you see any cars driving through stuff, don't worry too much about that. But yeah, you're in sort of speed zone and drift zone, so mostly ghost mode. Don't have to worry too much about AI traffic. The Camaro ran through relatively clean. I mean, this was kind of a little bit of rivalry between the two muscle cars. You know, Camaro, the GT350R, very, very similar vehicles. You also got to bear in mind here, I mean, yes, these are highly, highly modified vehicles, but they are going up against a Jesko at the end of the day, and these don't have as much power as the Jesko and are about the same sort of weight and don't quite have the same trick aero. They do have, of course, Forza aero on the cars, but it was always going to be a tall order for stuff to beat the Jesko up here. It was more just how close could you get, and could you win your own little battle? I mean, yeah. That was the main of it. The Z4 was a curious choice, interesting choice. Wasn't expecting to see a Z4 turn up in this one. I mean, it's very difficult to judge just sort of watching from these angles just how quick the cars were going. I mean, you see some slides from most vehicles. You're going to see that from everything. There's so much power going on in these cars. You know, the muscle cars do get some big rear tyres, which is always helpful in terms of putting the power down. The custom Ford, this thing is mad, and we've seen how much it struggles trying to use that power, but it has a lot of power when it does find traction, and that's always the thing with this. You can go phenomenally fast, but it's scary and very difficult to hold on to through these sections, because it just doesn't have the grip, doesn't have the traction out of these corners that the other cars do. If it does go wrong here, you're going to have a very, very big moment. It's just about keeping together through these. You see it there, just start letting go. It's a handful, but a quick one. Corvette, I mean, this is a popular one for budget stuff that we've done in the past. You get quite a lot of car for not very much money. You get some big tyres on the back of it. In fact, some of the biggest tyres probably on the back of it here. And yeah, it's a good choice of a big slide out of the hairpin. Again, you're running thousands of horsepower in these machines. They're going to be sliding around all over the place. Now, one of the most powerful cars, 1,200 horsepower in the Lotus Esprit. Yeah, that's the same power that we had the Jesko running at. And that's a lot of power through the rear wheels of a car that doesn't have the biggest tyres, and the Esprit was an absolute handful. It really, really struggled getting off the line, and unfortunately for the Lotus, as it came up towards the finish line, it got all out of shape with a big wiggle. It just didn't have the grip to make it through that final corner, slid off into the tyre bundles. It got it across the line, but that's how difficult these cars are to drive. Little mistakes are very easy to make here. Like Caterham, as I said, it is the least powerful car here. Actually opted to not run the turbos, figuring that by running less power, it's actually going to go quicker because it would actually be controllable. These sort of cars can be incredibly difficult to drive and be an incredible handful when it comes to any sort of game. You put 700 horsepower in a car as light as a Caterham, funnily enough, you're going to have some difficulties. And, well, it might not have the power down the straights, but it was more controllable in the turns. And the TVR, this is another one actually surprised me a little bit, seeing a TVR, the Griffin, turned up. This thing had great traction out of the corners. It was actually sliding around a bit less than some of the other cars. I mean, that's not the very TVR way. TVRs are normally crazy and out of control and everything, but no, the Griffin was doing good out of these corners, and that is where it was kind of making its time. Not the very fastest down the straights, no, but it did have excellent drive off of these corners as it runs up towards the finish of its run there. So the TVR was definitely a contender in all of this. The mono, I mean, we've seen how fast it had been at the race. It had been, well, stupendously quick, but that speed comes at a price, and that price is controllability. Drivability, probably the better word. Both work. It's an absolute animal to drive this thing, and if something does go wrong, you're in such a fast, such a light car that you're going to pay the price. This one is going through the bumps, I think. A little bit of lag as well doesn't help in terms of the drone filming it, but it got out of shape going across a bump and just couldn't get back under control before the finish line. Exactly the same place the Esprit had issues. It's just so difficult to drive those cars quickly because, yeah, you've got so much power in such a light vehicle, and a vehicle that, while designed to go quick, is not designed to have this level of speed. The Lotus 311, I mean, I was astounded. I never liked the 311 how it drove in previous Horizon games, and since then I've never touched the car. Generally just avoided it. I like it, it looks cool and everything, but to drive in Forza games has been horrific in the past. However, this maybe in Horizon 4 it is better. Certainly this one wasn't actually having too many issues. You've got proper full-on track toy here going up the hill climb, and yeah, it wasn't looking too bad. It wasn't too twitchy or trying to kill you constantly, so there's that. Monte Carlo was always a little bit of an oddball. In this one, yes, it's got slightly different tyres perhaps to the rest. It might be a small, but it's still a big boat. It looks cool going up here, but it's still a big boat going up against Caterhams and Lotus here. And it's very expensive to get it to this level. Get a big slide, more big slides from the Monte Carlo. Yeah, the slight tyre advantage doesn't quite negate big boatiness in that one. And then we turn of the Jesko. I ran last at all this, and it had become night. Not that makes too much of a difference here. Visibility's not too bad around this stage. Now the Jesko, the gearbox is a nightmare in this car. The gearbox is so annoying with its unbelievably short gears early on. You have to launch it in third and fourth gear out of these corners off the start line. Even you have to. You can adapt to it. It's okay. It's okay. You can adapt to it. It is just a little bit annoying. But I mean, the main thing with this car is the Jesko was built for this much speed. The Jesko was built for this much power. It has the grip and it's the control that goes with it, essentially, that means that I can push this car up this stage with more ease. It's still not easy, don't get me wrong, but you'll see the Jesko, it slides around as you get on the power. You've still got 1,200 horsepower jumping out the back of the car when you go to go around these corners and everything, but it's just more manageable in here. It's easier to put that power down, a bit easier anyway, to put that power down. We have more downforce as we come around this final corner. It's 180 miles an hour across the finish line there. So yeah, it ramps up speed this stage. It's a good test, it's a fun test, it's something a little bit different. And I got a clean run out of Jesko, that's what matters. On to the times, and it would be the Koenigsegg that would go fastest. It was unbeatable on the hill climb stage, 55.8 for that Jesko. It's not the biggest of victories, and second place is a surprise in this. The custom Ford. Despite the fact that thing is, again, incredibly difficult to drive, and we've seen how much it was struggling putting the power down out of the corners, it was still very, very quick. Yes, probably the run to the finish line and kind of the run up the hill, when it could use its straight line speed, would have been where it made up its time. It's not by much, though. In fact, there is a couple of tenths of a second separating second, third, and fourth. The Lotus, that would claim third in this, beating the Caterham. Incredibly close between those three. The TVR would get best of the rest, if you like, takes fifth ahead of the Mustang. Very close between those two. The Mustang gets bragging rights of the American cars, beating the Camaro. The Z4 would go into eighth. Kind of surprised from the Corvette. The Corvette down in ninth place. There was no real obvious sort of slow issues with that run. It just didn't quite have the pace getting up the hill. The Monte Carlo, not so surprised out. Down in 10th, a couple of seconds off the pace. Said big boat struggles. Then we have the Esprit and Mono, both found the wall at the final corner. The Esprit was struggling. The Mono's time was around about where we saw the Custom and the Lotus 311 before it had their off. But it's just so difficult to drive. On to the drag race. So, naturally, we're driving high-end hypercar. Well, we're trying to beat a high-end hypercar. So we're going to use the long drag strip. This is the Juggernaut. So I say sadly, it does have some corners to negotiate. I'd like a long drag race that didn't have to worry about corners and all that, but this is what we've got to work with on Horizon 4, so this is what we're going to have to use. Now, top speed wise, the Jesko is the best one here. I mean, it's designed. Okay, this isn't the absolute version, but it is designed for that speed. It's got the aerodynamics to get to that speed where the other cars don't. It's just whether they'll be fast enough until we get there. The 311 gets an absolutely stunning launch. I had problems with the gears because I can't start in higher gears unless I was in a proper drag race. They didn't let you. The 311 gets a great launch, but has then run out of speed. The Monte Carlo does well. The Esprit goes well on the other lane, as does the Ford Custom. Now, this is what we were kind of expecting. These cars would perhaps launch a bit better than the Jesko. Now, the Monte Carlo is actually clever. It changes lane for the upcutting corner, which I wish I had done. In this one, we're chasing down that Ford. He's now hit 270 miles an hour, and we have the aero. Now, I go for a lane hop, which was terrifying as I get airtime at, again, 270 miles an hour through all of that. But I can get to 270, and the rest just don't have the aero. They hit that aero wall, and they can't do it. So, on these longer drag races, while, you know, a mile drag race, the Jesko would probably be about third or fourth, the likes of the Ford. these longer ones, no, it's just too quick. So the Jesko takes victory from the fourth. The BAC Mono actually does have some good speed down here. Gets up to third ahead of the Esprit. Monte Carlo gets fifth ahead of the Corvette. Then Z4, Camaro, Mustang, Griffith, and then the 311 and the Caterham down at the bottom. That's, again, to be expected. The 311's launch was mad, but yeah, no top end, neither for the Caterham, of course. We then move on to the 0 to 100 to 0 test. Well, again, always like this test, always interesting, throws up some fun results. There is a small problem with this one. With the Jesko's gears are awful for this. So you have to start in fourth. You have to be in fifth gear to get to 100 in this car, which is stupid. It's very annoying. It does kind of give some problem with this one. The BAC Mono would go second, and I don't think it went in a straight line at any point in doing its run, but it did get to 100 and then stop quicker than that of the Jesko. We move on to the 311. When we saw the launch this thing got in the drag race, it was phenomenal. Of course, very small, very light, fantastic brakes on that sort of car, and it does go very well indeed down here. One of the other difficulties, these cars are so quick, actually trying to get, like, reacting fast enough when it gets to 100 and stopping while trying to keep it in a straight line isn't easy. We saw the Jesko is a couple of miles an hour over 100 as the Mustang can't get stopped any sooner. Yeah, it's difficult to manage everything. The Lotus, it's a mad car, lots of power, but doesn't have the traction to launch particularly. It's not a bad run, though, for the vehicle. The Z4, much more composed off the line, actually drives in a straight line down here and does a good job of getting stopped. Can't beat the BAC Mono, but it does beat the Jesko Corvette. That one will go up next. Again, we haven't seen too many issues from this car in terms of crazy track, a little bit of a wobble down the drag strip, and it has wandered. Now, this is something we did see. These vehicles are so powerful. It's why we see some of these cars running in a funny order, because these cars are so powerful and so difficult to drive, they do wander a little bit around the place. The Custom Ford, that couldn't beat the Lotus 311. Don't worry about the TVR. That made a mistake when it's run. It put on the brakes too early. It would run again later. We then have the Monte Carlo that's also struggling to go in a straight line. It gets to 100 and stops, but it wiggles its way there. Almost as spectacular as the Mono in terms of how far out of control it was. The Caterham, it's very small and very light, fantastic brakes. Not the most power, but it still does a good job. Yeah, it's probably one of the slower cars to hit 100, but the brakes are fantastic on something like that. Camaro also spinning the wheels a little bit off the line. It does a good run, though. It does get a very good run, just losing out to the Caterham there. It beats the Jesko, beats the Mustang as well in that little muscle car battle. And then the TVR would have I think it got on the brakes about 95, they said, so it's a bit too early on the brakes. This time, a better run. Still a good showing from the Griffith. Can't quite beat the 311, but does beat that Custom Ford. So there we have it. On to the kind of overview shot, if you will, and we have got that 311 taking victory. It is, yeah, very, very good. Its launch is fantastic. The Griffith also very, very good in this one, beating that Ford Custom. That thing's got so much acceleration, but not quite the traction. The Mono, I mean, we saw how wobbly that went. We're about 3 different lanes before coming to a stop. Quite impressive. So quite impressive to be that good and having visited 3 lanes. Then we have the Z4 that would beat the Caterham. Caterham beating the Camaro, and then the Jesko is out there. I mean, it's, yeah, we lose out to that Camaro. We do beat the Lotus Esprit. We've seen the traction, the launch issues that car has. It's then very, very close between the Corvette and Mustang. With the Corvette, we think just getting it. It's difficult, it's very difficult to tell actually with some of these angles, but yeah, very, very close between the pair of them. I mean, the whole field up until that point is actually all pretty damn close together, and then a little bit further down. Just got to keep going a little bit further down over there. The Monte Carlo. Yeah, it wandered. It didn't wander as much as the Mono quite, but yeah, there we have it. Slight disappointment from the Jesko. It's the gearing is so. It wasn't a perfect run from me. I braked a little too late, but the gearing is what really lets it down. As far as beating the Koenigsegg goes, though, trying to do it with a rear-wheel drive car is incredibly difficult. Funnily enough, well, yes, you know, a couple of 100,000 credits is going to get you a vehicle that is very, very fast and can maybe compete in some events. It's going to be incredibly tough to drive. And I mean, the Jesko wasn't. Sure, any car this fast can be difficult to drive quickly, but I wasn't having the same fights that you saw with the likes of the Mono, the likes of the Ford, that could match it. And some of the other cars that were a bit tamer, a bit easier to drive, just simply couldn't match the Koenigsegg for pace, either at a circuit or at a straight line. So yeah, it is very, very tough to go faster than the Jesko. The Mono would be the winner, and technically speaking, it beat the Jesko in 2 events. It beat it in the race, it beat it in the 0 to 100 to 0. It was the only vehicle to beat the Jesko in 2 events. And yeah, it did go faster for considerably less money. But it also crashed. It was also very, very difficult to drive. It was, you saw how much it slipped around, how much it got into trouble. So yeah, it can beat it, but the Jesko is a lot nicer to drive. I think one of the biggest surprises for me in this one, the Ford, the double down, I have to say, did a lot better than I expected. In a straight line, of course, I know how unbelievably fast this car is. It's very, very powerful. But it's actually around the circuits that it kind of impressed me more. It was keeping up. It had a very good fight with the Jesko, and it could possibly have beaten the Jesko at the circuit. Had there not been contact. Okay, it doesn't have the top speed, and the control is questionable at times, but when it works, it was a phenomenally quick car. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. Always good to see some obscure vehicles running well. The Camaro, I mean, the muscle cars were fast. Let's again, in relative terms here, all of these cars here are unbelievably quick. And, you know, they were kind of close, but it was a couple of seconds down on the hill climb. They couldn't match the Jesko really. Yes, 0 to 100 to 0, they did. You know, the Camaro would beat it. But, yeah, overall, they're just not quite. It's 400,000 credits, still very fast, but no, not quite enough to beat the Jesko. The Caterham, it was quick in places, its lack of real top speed. That was perhaps the biggest problem for a car like this. You know, when we come. And the 311, again, similar story with the Caterham and the 311. They just don't have the top speed to fight with the Jesko. And we're talking even at, like, faster circuits like the first track we went to, they can't match the Jesko when it can pull to 200 plus miles an hour down those straights, and then these cars simply can't. Really twisty stuff they could manage, but it just wasn't enough. They still didn't have enough grip to overcome the Jesko's power. Now, of course, I will say there were a couple of exclusions made, shall we say, for this one. Things like the Ultima weren't allowed to run because, yes, the Ultima could do it very straightforwardly, and everyone would bring an Ultima because, you know, that's the budget incredible performance vehicle. The Mosler probably could as well. So yeah, there were a couple of cars that weren't allowed in this. That's why we didn't see them. Before I do go in all of this, we had some outtakes, shall we say. It was one of those evenings when it came to filming of all sorts of weird and wacky problems. First of all, this is on the hill climb stage for the Mustang. Everything going fairly well as we come through this, and controller goes off. It's not really what you want. Just on the exit of the corner, there goes the controller. The Mustang is just going to roll across the road and boop into the fence. Not so helpful. Not so helpful. That it's just one of those things. When it comes to gaming, goes on, I go and all of that sort of thing. Yeah, controller turn off. That is going to ruin your day. On to the TVR's run up the. Again, so this during the hill climb portion. Now, I hadn't got any warning that I was going to be removed from the game for inactivity. It just decided at one point to go, yeah, you know what, we're going to kick you out. Normally, if you're flying around in drone mode, it'll give you a warning saying that you're going to be kicked. But no, it just removed me from the game. So I've been moving the drone around the whole time. So that one there, we had to go and have helpful restart. BAC Mono. It might have had issues on its complete run. The first attempt from the Mono went even more worse, got a big wheel spin off the line and wiggled towards a house. That shows you how difficult the Mono is to drive. It really is an incredibly tough car to get everything right. When it does go right, it goes quick. Now, we saw a little bit of this from cars, because everyone was starting in often higher gears to try and stop some wheel spin, and that does sometimes mean if you're running manual with clutch, you stall it. That's the Corvette's first attempt at a launch, ending up in a stall. Now, 0 to 100 is 0. The first attempt, I had some issues. Let's say I had some issues. This is what I'm talking about. It's very difficult to actually keep the car in a straight line and look at the speedo and everything, and I got on the brakes too early. I realised as soon as I jumped on the brakes that it was too early, so we had to spin around and have another go. This was about 96, I think I got on that one. Now, the reason why we saw some cars running out of order, as I said, some cars are very difficult to launch and very difficult to drive, and keep control of it, everything. And well, when we had the Z4 go first and the Esprit go second, that was one of the more difficult cars to keep under control. Things didn't go so well. The Esprit got a big bit of wheel spin and then was aimed directly at the back of the Z4. nudging it and then ruining the results. So that's why they swap places, and yeah. These cars were mad. It was good fun. It was good fun. Yeah, it's nice having the Jesko in the game. I'm probably never going to use it again, but it's it's a fun addition. It's a good car. It is, as I said, it is surprisingly controllable despite dealing with so much ludicrous power. Yeah, there are vehicles out there that could match it for pace in some stuff, maybe even go faster than it, but those cars are often horrifically difficult to drive and yeah, have issues of their own, shall we say. I like the Jesko. Also, on a side note, yes, the Jesko in the game is running 1,200-ish horsepower. I know the actual real car is... Well, the actual real car has 1,600 if you run it on special fuel. If you run it on normal fuel, it's 1,200-ish here. And we were using it on the standard settings for the game. So that's why before... In fact, it's probably too late now. The comments will be full of that, but that's the reason why. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching. And until next time, a goodbye.